Well, welcome back to In the House. It's exciting to have with us a representative from House District 113. He's been in the House now for a couple of terms. Representative Jake Johnson, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
And you've got a kind of a big district with McDowell, Henderson, Polk, and Rutherford counties out there in the western part of the state.
That's right. That's out where if it says 3 miles, it'll take you 30 minutes to get there. That kind of twist and turns in the roads.
I tell you, I went to Cherokee recently, and the map said 5 hours. It took me 7
Yeah.
because I got stuck in Asheville, just sitting there. Not sure why, but
That's why I like driving at night. I don't like getting stuck in those parking lots on the interstate. I'll drive at night.
Well, the leaves sure are pretty out in your part of the state right now, and it's a good time to be from the west.
That's right. We want people coming there and spending money.
Exactly. Now you're not near any of the fires down there, are you?
It's a little bit north of my district, but it is up there, and I think there's a burn ban in place now to try to make sure we don't repeat anything like that.
Yeah.
So they're working hard to get everything mitigated.
Just wanted to mention there are hundreds of firefighters from all over the state, so we appreciate the work that they're doing to try to contain that stuff.
Absolutely.
But so the reason I wanted to chat with you this morning is even though we're kind of in a downtime, there's no session going on, there is committee work, and you're involved with an oversight committee that recently took a look at tens of millions of dollars that were overpaid by the Department of Employment Security. Tell us a little bit about that committee meeting, what went on, and what you found.
Well, it stemmed from a lot of frustration about the wait times and the customer service, and folks just frankly waiting on the phone for hours, getting hung up on that really needed it. And then you had folks that, obviously there was some level of fraud that was detected in these systems. And the big number that we saw, and you mentioned tens of millions, we're still trying to track down those exact numbers, but they're really big numbers of monies paid out that were overpayments. So maybe somebody didn't report, part-time that they were working and got more than they were supposed to, or calculating error, or however it was done. In any number of ways there were errors made. The bottom line is there's, tens of millions in taxpayer dollars out there that were paid incorrectly, and we don't know if we'll ever see back. It's bad enough that it happened. What we really want to prevent is this from ever happening again. Incorrect payments being paid out where they're the point of not being able to recover them. So we treat every taxpayer dollar with respect and want to make sure that we're being the best stewards of the taxpayer money, and that's making sure that waste like this doesn't happen.
I hate to admit this, but I was in that unemployment system back in 2009, 2010, and I had worked in the radio business, and if you don't lose your job in radio, you really haven't earned your stripes. But anyway, I was in between positions, and boy, they were strict with me. You couldn't get away with anything. Not that I was trying to, but if you followed the rules, there didn't seem to be any way that any of this could happen. And so I'm sitting here reading a couple of different articles and the stuff that the committee went through, and I'm just wondering what happened here. The system sure seems a lot different than it was when I was a part of it as a person on unemployment.
Well, and I think the overall point we were trying to make is I think it was a big mistake for the governor to shut down the state the way he did. With the abruptness of it, none of these departments were equipped to handle that. And I just don't know what their plan A was in shutting down a state, laying all these people off, and then having no capacity to handle them. I mean, and some people were in a really bad way. There'll always be some level of fraud of people trying to take advantage of the system. But it was truly, you have to look at what was the plan. And I think that was the point a lot of us were trying to make during that hearing was there was no plan in place to shut down a state, lay all these people off, and have no system to support them. And, I think that was a policy error in the executive branch.
I think you're right. And one thing that's coming out now, Representative Johnson, is some pretty significant publications like the Wall Street Journal and others are now saying, well, we had all these lockdowns and they didn't work, you know, and it was sort of a knee-jerk reaction, like you're saying. And, you know, maybe in their defense a little bit, you know, the CDC and everybody was saying, oh my gosh, we've got this pandemic. But to your point, there was no thought given at all to the immediate repercussions of what they were doing.
And to drag on for so long, I can only imagine how frustrated a business owner is that either lost their business because they couldn't hire anyone because no one would go back to work when all this unemployment money was being paid out. How frustrated would you be as a business owner who, maybe you could only open part-time and you're losing tons of revenue because you can't. I mean, I remember I'd go to plenty of restaurants that said limited menu, limited hours. They were shutting on certain days. And then, not able to pay their rent. And that's extremely frustrating, especially when you look back and say all this money was being paid out incorrectly and we were suffering the consequences as business owners. I can't imagine that frustration.
I experienced what you're talking about firsthand at more than one restaurant.
Yep.
Going in and had the hostess tell me, it'll be 45 minutes before we can even take your order.
Yep.
We just don't have any help.
And then people leaving, and that's money out the door that you're losing. So just a lot of unfortunate things that we'd like to never see happen again. And it's just we want to be the best stewards of the taxpayer dollar, and that means sometimes you have to harp on the past a little bit to go back and figure out what went wrong and be accountable for those dollars and make sure it never happens again.
Now, going back to that committee meeting, you had the auditor there and some others talking. Have you figured out what went wrong? Was it just too much all at once, like you're alluding to, or were there other things that were going on that were need to be addressed at the Employment Security Commission?
Well, and the new secretary that has since taken over, I think they're starting to go back now and kind of see where things went off the rails. But in the auditor's report, there was a lot of reporting mechanisms she suggested be put in place. So I believe there's a follow-up meeting necessary to say, okay, the auditor gave you these steps to fix this. Are they being taken?
Right.
And frankly, I thought she did a really good job during the meeting. They said, you publish all these audits. Does that mean there's something wrong in multiple of these agencies and things? And she goes, I don't publish one unless we find something worth note. I'm not going to waste my time going all the way through an audit. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I think, I'm not sure you can point at one particular thing that went wrong. I think it was a capacity issue. I think it was not enough personnel to deal with it. I think there was issues with the metrics they were using, how they were relaying it to people, what counted and what didn't as income. And so I don't think you can point the finger at exactly one thing. I think it was just they weren't equipped for it. And when the governor shut down the state, they're stuck with a lot of people trying to get through it one time, more than they've ever had to process before.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make a comment, and I'm not going to put you on the spot. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. But here's what I've noticed. When our current treasurer, Dale Falwell, was head of the Employment Security Commission, that thing ran like a well-oiled machine. They got customer service wait times down to just minutes. They got payments processing in record times. They were really running that department with great efficiency, great customer service. All of a sudden, there's a different party in charge, and the thing goes back to being slow and inefficient. I'm not saying anything that I want you to comment on necessarily, but there seems to be a big difference.
Well, we'll just say it's not the only state agency where there's probably some customer service issues.
Yeah. Well, and let's tee off on that, because I know that you guys are looking at some modernization and other things that might improve customer service at our favorite place to go, the DMV.
Yes, and I've asked members within our caucus, and really members across the aisle as well. When you get stories of your constituents, real life stories of people going to agencies, and we do use the DMV as an example because it's one of I would say one of the most antiquated we have. Uh, Tell us those stories. Tell us what they're going through, what they're experiencing, so we can use that as a way to improve things. And I think we need an all-out overhaul and modernization. When I say that, oh, see our energy efficient lights in here,
Oh
they're
my
going up,
goodness.
and yeah, that happens all the time. So,
Oh boy.
so when we talk about when I say start to finish modernization, you have to break it down in phases. And I think the vendors you work with in every one of those stages, some could be similar, but everyone has their thing that they do well. And I'll give an example. First thing we need to do is get the data modernized on the back end. All the data we've got, a lot of it's, I'm sure, obsolete. You've been using the same system for 35 years. You're going to have some obsolete data in there that you need to purge out. And you've
Absolutely.
got some things you need to modernize on the data side. Get it in a format where you can then interface that with our employees. And one of the big hiring problems they've got right now, a kid coming out of college, or even just looking for a job, in their hometown, who wants to go work and deal with a system that's these, uh, borderline black and green computer screens from the 80s type of thing. And, who's going to want to use that kind of technology? And they'll tell you it makes it very hard to recruit people to come out and use this antiquated technology. And that's no one person's fault. It's just, it hadn't been fixed. So you have to transform the data on the back end. I think that's your first stage. And by the last stage, I think you have to make a customer service system to where, I always use the example that I can go to an airport now. I've checked in on my phone. I've got a barcode. I scan it, it prints off my documents. I walk up to a person. I think there always has to be that touch of a real person there
Right.
that they look at it and go, yep, that's you. You haven't, skewed anything here, you know, uh, and you've already checked all the boxes of, whether you're going there the first time and you'd like to register to vote, and that's when you need to talk to the real person as well. I'm just renewing a license. I need a new picture taken. You've already checked all those things ahead of time, and you can start filtering those people out into different lines, as opposed to waiting 6 hours in a line to get up there and go, oh, you didn't sign the right thing here, back of the line, or you got to reschedule and come back on a different day. All things we hear crazy stories. So I think there's a simpler way to do it where you're in and out of there pretty quick, and everything is way more verifiable on the back end that we can cross-reference with other states, other agencies, and maybe when you go and register it, it syncs to the license plate office, and gets that mailed out quicker. So I think there's a lot of ways to increase efficiency there that, frankly, almost every North Carolinian will appreciate.
Oh, absolutely. Uh, you know, there's an app called My DMV or something like that that I used the last time I had to pay my um, property. You pay your property tax and your license plate renewal at the
Yep.
same time. And to your point, this was pretty easy.
Yeah.
Open the app, pay it, boom, I'm done. And so the day of having to go pay that in person, or through the mail, and you don't know how long it's going to take to get there through that, uh, I think this is a good example of what you're talking about, and how we can modernize and streamline these systems to make them more efficient, not only for the public, but also for the agency. Now, there was money in the budget, right, to help modernize.
There was, and here's where I think we need to look at some potential changes. In the past, we've given modernization money to these departments and said, Fox Garden, the hen house situation. Here's the money. Tell us what's wrong with the organization you're in and how you plan to fix it. I think we've got to move to a model of having kind of a third party look at it and say, okay, you haven't got the right vendors doing the right things. Let us go through what all you need done and send you a list of who does that well. And you pick from that list of who you want to work with as a department. and what they offer, get proof of concepts from all those vendors that do things, everything from the data on the back end to the actual, I would call it a kiosk like you see at the airport, and the printing the license on the front end. All the way from the back to the front, you're going to work with multiple vendors. Here's the ones that do all these steps well, and let's work with the best of the best along every step of the way. So I think kind of the challenge is, who wants to change? I mean, who wants to learn a new system?
Yeah.
So there's always going to be growing pains when you evolve this legacy technology. That there's going to be growing pains because people, I know that system. I want to continue to use it, especially if you used it for 20 or 30 years. So we've just got to eventually start to move into a new system, and no better time than now to start.
Well, I think the technology is definitely out there. Wouldn't
Yeah.
you agree?
Oh, absolutely. We've got people that do all these things very well. We just have to bring them to the table and get them in North Carolina. And my goal is that when my constituents go to the DMV, and when my colleagues' constituents go to the DMV or any state agency, whether DMV, or any department we have across the state, that they have a seamless experience, and they have a good story to tell about it. That's just not always the case right now.
Yeah. Well, another good story, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but another good story is that in the budget that recently passed and is now is law for the past few weeks, there was money for some of these rural areas, smaller areas, tier 1 counties like Rutherford that you represent, that desperately need infrastructure in the way of broadband, water and sewer, and even community colleges. Like there's a nice picture viewing Speaker Moore at one of your community colleges, delivering them a pretty substantial check. Tell us about that and how these things will have ripple effects of helping the community.
Absolutely. And just using that one example, I think in rural areas, we've got a real shortage of healthcare workers, whether it be at our rural hospitals, senior living facilities, you name it, a huge need there. We were actually able to get 30 million to construct a new building to get people trained in that profession and get them out filling these needs in the community. And that's where I think we've really got to target is where is the highest priority need in our areas. And frankly, it's our tier 1 counties across the state are really hurting. A lot of the county governments and municipalities just don't have the resources. They don't have that tax revenue coming in that some of our bigger cities do. So when we look at where the need is, and there's a lot of wants out there in a budget, people hear $32 billion. There's a lot of wants out there. There has to be a prioritization of that. And we got to start with areas that are hurting the worst. And frankly, we were able to do wonderful things for the tier 1 county in our district. We're taking the first stages on a new law enforcement facility. Speaker Moore and I went out and toured it in person and saw just how severe the need was there. So we're really looking forward to seeing these things implemented. The broadband money is a huge one. I mean, we've got folks now that are still having to drive into town, maybe go to a coffee shop or a McDonald's or something to let their kids do their homework. There's no scenario of being able to do any of your work from home and get caught up there like a lot of us are able to do. So it's extremely frustrating for people that these areas are beautiful, the communities are so friendly, and they want to be there, but the resources just aren't there, and the infrastructure just isn't there. Water and sewer to make that workforce housing aspect. That maybe somebody's not able to live on the 10-acre farm with the big farmhouse. They can't afford that in our areas. But maybe the lower maintenance home, that maybe they're traveling a lot, younger, older, being able to get that water and sewer put in to be able to help them there. That's a really big deal. So we're excited about these things coming to fruition over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a what do they call it? A vicious circle. You have a tier 1 county that doesn't have the property tax base to be able to make these kind of improvements.
That's right.
Therefore, you look at a company that wants to come to North Carolina, and they might be looking at that county, but they'll pass on it because they might have to tack on the cost of upgrading all of that infrastructure themselves. And so that just keeps going, that they don't ever get pulled up out of that position of being, in need of growth and revenue. And so being able to help them with those infrastructure needs can go a long way in the future when it comes to economic development.
You're exactly right. And I mean, a younger person that graduates high school, what's their inspiration to stay if there's no jobs there?
Yeah.
So when there's not an infrastructure to support business and housing, you can't really be shocked that our young folks are moving away and not moving back to the rural areas. We've seen a real contraction of the population in these rural areas, and it be really focused around the metro areas. But who can blame the kid that there's no job there, that they can't stay? So you've got to be able to recruit business. That comes with infrastructure, good tax base, but the conditions on the ground have to be right too.
Now, we can't talk about politics or campaigning, but I'd be curious to know, for a guy like yourself during this downtime, I know you're doing your regular job, obviously,
Yep.
but what are you doing in the interim as far as your responsibilities as a member of the House?
I'll tell you, it makes me appreciate being back home in the district so much. I will tell you, being back in the mountains and being able to get back there often. We had an event last night in Raleigh, so I'm actually here now. But as soon as I wrap up my work here, I'll be headed back west. And really, we do have to start looking when we're in 2-year cycles like this. And people can't believe it. They said, "You've been up there a year. What now?" I said, "You file. You have to file in a month." So it truly is never ending, because you file, and then before you know it, the primaries will be here in March, and then we go back to session in April to come back and make budget adjustments based on the tax revenue that we're seeing. So it truly is a cycle of every 2 years. You're legislating for most of the year during the long session. And now with our interim committee, which I love the work we're doing on our oversight committee. I think it's a great service to the people of the state, being able to look into these things. We've got a full agenda. I can tell you, once we get into the new year, I think we've got a meeting potentially coming up in December. And then when we start the new year, we're going to be trying to do maybe 1 or 2 a month of rolling those out. And behind the scenes, people see the finished product kind of like they do a bill on the floor and go, you didn't even talk about it that much. Well, at that point, it's been debated for months leading up to that. And it's the same for the oversight. Behind the scenes, our staff work really hard to gather documents, give us the briefs on what we can expect to hear and see, and make sure we've got good articulate questions that we can ask our guests during the time that they're there. So the work really never stops. It's you always think you'll have time to stop and smell the roses, but right there you're always having to raise money, campaign, and then you get out and you mix the committee work in too. So we like staying busy. I don't want to be twiddling my thumbs. We want to stay busy.
And it's a part-time legislature, right?
Part-time, yeah. We forgot to mention that part. Yeah, that's in the fine print of the job description.
Yeah, exactly. Representative Jake Johnson, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for making time out of your busy schedule to share some time with us here on In the House, and I look forward to having you on again real soon.
Absolutely, Mark. Anytime. We love it. Thank you.
All right.